Why don't female deer sleep properly?
Oh man, this could go like
Is
so
this
many.
a doe thing?
This could go
They
so
don't have
many.
enough doe.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Well, they just doze.
They just doze.
I
That's
almost
not
got
doe.
it. I almost got
Super
it.
close.
You're on it.
Yeah, I knew doe was in there somewhere. I just couldn't figure out how to fit
that's
it
funny.
in, man. So yeah, they just doze.
They just doze.
Nice. I like it. So
Wednesday night here on the MCP, and it's not too bad for Dane and I. It's 7:00.
Yep. Yeah.
Long work days. You'll probably hear it in our voice.
Yeah.
But it's a little later for our friends over in Quebec.
Yep.
And like to welcome Julian Richardson, who is the lead designer. Is that the right title for you? Lead designer? Do I got that right?
Lead industrial designer. I lead the industrial design team. There's a bunch of us. So thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been,
and he's with Faction Bike Studio.
yes, Faction, but this is our second
Second episode. You might remember we had Adam on previously.
Yep.
And we promised you all a second episode with Faction.
Yeah.
And they were nice enough to agree to talk with us again.
Yeah.
We didn't drive them too crazy. And Julian's here to tell us all about more about Faction and a lot about industrial design.
Yes. Yeah. I've been deep diving into industrial design versus industrial engineering, which are different. And, and so we were researching that a little bit because I listened to another podcast with another manufacturer, and they always have guys on their industrial engineer, and I thought they were the same thing, but they're not. So
yeah, maybe that's a good place to start, man.
Yeah.
Could you help, like for our listeners, could you help us differentiate between like in a bicycle company or a bicycle design company? What's the difference between an engineer, industrial engineer, and an industrial designer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So myself, industrial design, that is kind of the more artistic side of things. We do a lot more of the visualization, a lot of the drawing. I happen to go to a school for industrial design within a faculty of engineering. So it is a little bit more technical than some industrial design programs. But I think that lends itself pretty nicely to working in this industry because it is still kind of that perfect marriage of, industrial or technical and kind of artistic elements too.
Nice.
We do all of the drawing. We do all of the CAD as well. Some companies will have separate titles for CAD modelers.
Do they call them CAD jockeys?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's a really important role. And, obviously that person is kind of sculpting the bike, and our industrial designers actually play that role as well.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah.
Okay. So for the uninformed, what's CAD?
CAD is computer aided design. And is that correct? Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an old term, right? Cause I used to think, what did we use? Shoot, I just spaced it. What's the old one?
AutoCAD
AutoCAD. Is what I used. And I hear that's not the main thing to go to anymore.
Yeah, that's not as much. AutoCAD is kind of the older 2D-ish version, right?
Yeah, that's what I used a lot, man. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I self-taught myself how to do it, and I really enjoyed it. But then it got way complicated and too time-consuming. So
yeah,
but
it's true. And with bikes now, everything's so complicated. You kind of have to do everything in 3D. So yeah, we do use SolidWorks for all of our 3D CAD.
Yeah, I remember SolidWorks coming out. This is a long time ago before I did that. Like it's been 20 years probably. Yeah, so it's been a while. So
I'm addicted to artificial intelligence and specifically the large language models at the moment, and more specifically Anthropic's tool Claude, which is just amazing. So it's like a ChatGPT competitor. But we asked Claude earlier today, what was the difference between a industrial designer and an industrial engineer? And it gave us a real big summary, but it had some interesting questions. It said that the industrial designer would ask, how can this product delight and satisfy the user? Where the industrial engineer would ask, how can we produce this better, faster, and with fewer resources?
Gotcha.
What do you think about that?
I mean, that seems like a pretty good summary.
Yeah.
I think another element of industrial design is kind of like user-centric design. So like we're always designing things that humans will be using. So the electronics you hold every day, the even the fixtures in your bathroom, the tools that you work on your bike with are all kind of worked on by industrial designers at some point. So the user-centric element of it is, how does a human interact with it, right?
So you're thinking about like ergonomics, and then like, how does it feel in your hand?
Tactile, like,
is it intuitive to use, or is it confusing? You can go all the way down to like really fine details like textures and materials and how that affects how you use it. Does the plastic wear out before the metal bit does? Should we adjust that, or is it meant to do that? That kind of perspective.
Okay, I have a serious question that you just triggered. Okay.
Dane's been triggered again.
Who is responsible for matte finishes on bikes? Because I want to talk to that person.
Yeah. Like, you probably want to shoot them, right?
Yeah. Like, is that a industrial designer, or is that some guy named Larry who just had extra paint left over? Like, what happened there?
I think it's Larry.
Yeah.
Pitchfork.
Or white bar tape. That's another one. Like, it looks great on a computer, but who puts it on a bike? Like white bar tape. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but I mean, in all seriousness, like the finish of the bike is in your job jar. Is that right?
Not all the time. So like larger companies will have kind of color, material, finish designers who are more focused on the graphics, the paint, and those types of things. We've certainly worked on that element of bikes quite often. But it's not something that's like an everyday thing. We're more focused on designing the frames themselves and creating the 3D models for them.
I just realized that we're getting new listeners every day.
Yep.
And there may be some that didn't hear the first episode with Faction Bike Studio, and we jumped right into the meat with Julian here. Julian, could you take a minute? Yeah, could you take a minute and just explain to like maybe some of our new listeners that haven't heard that previous episode, like what is Faction Bike Studio?
Just a quick summary on what you guys do and for bike industry. So
we're a design and engineering firm, and we primarily do design and engineering for bike frames and forks. We do work on components too, but a good meat of the work is the frame and the fork. And we're talking kind of start to finish, from like the original, from the brief and the project definition all the way to the handoff to the factory and the support through production. So you're not doing this for some individual. Like Bob doesn't call you up and say, "Hey, I was thinking about buying a bike. Can you design me one?" That's not what you're doing. You're doing it for the actual bike manufacturer. Like, so let's say we just make up a name and call it brand X, calls you up and says, "Hey, we want to come up with a new bike. We don't have any idea. Is it they're out of ideas, or they're in a new scope, or like how involved are you? Like, you're not full time with them, right?" Occasionally we act as a full R&D department for smaller companies. Okay. So smaller companies that don't really have the funds to start their own R&D company, or sometimes the know-how. They can rely on us to be kind of like the full turnkey R&D. And then for larger companies, we tend to be more of like the overflow support. So say a really big company is trying to develop like a carbon and an alloy version of a mountain bike to release at the same time. They only have the bandwidth to do one. We can do the other for them. Kind of thing.
Okay.
Oh, that's super cool. So and one of your, I think, ethos of your company, or one of the ground rules of your company, is that you don't disclose like which manufacturers you're supporting on what products.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's mostly silent stuff. If you see us online, we do have some kind of marketing partnerships. Did some really cool stuff with Frameworks last year and this year ongoing. And then we're doing some really cool stuff with Danger Home as well, if you guys are aware of him.
So those were brought up in the last podcast. I encourage anyone who's interested to go check that out. But I don't think I brought this up yet. So I have a Frameworks at the shop now. One of our listeners got a Frameworks. He's been contacting me, and he was talking to me about various things. And I had seen his Frameworks, and I was like, hey, as a joke, was like, "Hey, whenever you're ready to get rid of that thing, let me know." And sure enough, he's like, you can borrow it. Just take it, build it up and ride it. And just let me know what you think of it. And so now it's at the shop and we're going to pimp it out and go test it up against a couple other downhill bikes. So I'm stoked to ride that thing and to try it out, and shout out to Brian for letting me try it out. So we'll have some info. We'll do a podcast on how that goes. So.
Yes. I mean, it seems like they're doing pretty good. I think in hardline, right? Didn't a rider on that, one of the Frameworks riders qualified the fastest time in hardline this year? I think I saw.
Yeah. Asa is an absolute bullet on that bike. It's pretty wild. And it's super awesome to see him hitting the podium. I know he's the end of junior or start of elite. I'm not too sure, but
I wonder if he's who was at Bootleg. There was a Frameworks young athlete at Bootleg one time when I was racing that was just smoking everybody. I bet you that's who it is.
Could have been.
So Bootleg's in Nevada. So
okay,
I'm not sure where he's from.
It's just outside of Las Vegas.
Yeah, literally like 30 miles or something. So
I know they're all down there training all winter. So
yeah. So that's awesome. So you guys are kind of like hired guns for the bike industry, you know?
Yeah. That's a good summary for sure.
Yeah. So you come in and kind of fit what they need. And so you don't have a product that you sell, you accept yourselves. So
yeah.
The
only other thing that you'll see online, of course, is that we've been really involved in like bonded frames. So,
with Loctite.
Loctite was the one that we did. That's part of the framework sponsor with Nico. But we've used all kinds of other bonding materials in order to put them together. So
did you guys deep dive into the pivot debacle with Bernard Kerr's bike?
Yeah, I mean, I think Adam might have touched on this too. Like, we definitely were interested in what happened, and any sort of type of like failure there is something that you want to learn from. So but it sounds like they understand what happened and why it happened. So I think that's a good starting point, at least
they're still doing that process. The new Trailcat was developed with that process too, and bike's amazing. So
yeah, we were actually in the Pivot R&D lab a couple weeks after that happened. Yeah. And got to see it and talk to them about it. And I think they got a good handle on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They definitely and honestly, Bernard, from what I know, I don't know him personally, but from what I know, he is hard on stuff. So if somebody's going to break something, he's a good one to do that. So
yeah, these guys, it's pretty intense how the forces that they put on these machines.
It's amazing.
It's unlike anything else, right?
Yeah.
Hey, so so maybe you could take us through step by step for our listeners, the process from you get the initial inquiry from a bike company. How does that, what are the steps that you guys go through leading up to you deliver your final design and they go manufacture it? Could you help maybe walk us through that?
Yeah, of course. So we have PDP, product development process. It's pretty standard, but we have adapted it to obviously the cycling world, if you're familiar with that whole thing. But essentially what that means is we've got different phases of the project. We start with creating the brief with the client, and that's kind of the whole agreement of what the project's going to be, and adding as much definition to it as you can. So what material is it? Where are you going to manufacture it? Of course, the hard requirements, like what category is it? How much travel does it have? What is it compatible with? Call out anything that's unique. Is there something that's going to be super kind of unique to this bike that nothing else does? And of course, there's all kinds of other technical requirements there. What sort of safety and tests does it have to pass?
Right.
That's kind of the phase where we agree on that. And once we've kind of all gotten comfortable with what it is, we move into the concept phase. So that's when we're doing a lot of the most exciting stuff, which is the sketching and the early 3D models and kind of really defining what this thing is going to look like.
Yeah.
That's when the engineers also develop the kinematic and the geometry. They do the calculations on the hardware to make sure that all of the bolts and pivots and everything are going to stand up to the forces that we expect for this bike. And once we kind of have that, it's more of the definition, the math behind it is all complete, that's when we get into the detailed designs. That's when we actually make the SolidWorks model, and we would run FEAs, so like the finite element analysis, which is basically simulating wear and forces on the bike on the computer before anything actually exists in reality. We'd also do 3D prints then. At that phase, you could also do kind of like a glued together mule if you wanted to, in order to actually get out and ride something that is very close to what the real bike will be like. And then the following phase is kind of like production support. So that's when you release it to the factory and you start getting their feedback, and you work towards like the first prototypes with the factory and then eventually into production. So there's not really anything like super surprising there. This is very similar to the process that other bike brands take. But that's our advantage, is that we do have a similar process, so we can kind of jump in with other companies, and we're already up to speed. We're already doing the kind of the same things that they're doing. So
that's awesome. That's like a skill set that you can keep using for different people, but you learn from every client how to make it better. So
one of the things I struggle with, I can't wrap my head around, is how you guys manage like the intellectual property containment from project to project. That seems like that would be a really tough challenge.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a challenge for sure. You have to make sure you know who has partnerships with what other brands, and there's a bit of file management there to make sure that there's no spillage.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the best word.
So as long as I've been doing this, that's something that I need a little bit of explanation on. So intellectual property. So you're saying that if you guys come up with a design, you guys have to figure out who owns it? Or are you saying that if you're using somebody else's design, you got to make sure that you have permission? Or what are you saying?
Well, the standard way, at least in the United States, I'm not sure what it is in Canada, but the standard way that intellectual property law works is that the person that actually creates the design owns the design.
Gotcha.
Unless there's a term and condition between the two companies that stipulates something different.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that your companies, probably the companies that you work with, you guys probably have some type of intellectual property agreement, and they probably own the design that they're paying you to develop.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So we, anything, it's in our contracts. Anything that we create is theirs.
Okay.
Within the scope of that project.
So what I'm talking about is like, if you solve this nice little problem on brand X's or brand A's bike, you can't actually take that solution to brand B unless brand A says it's okay.
Gotcha. Okay. So let me put this in like layman's term, because that's what I'm good at. So like I'm going to use Pivot as an example, and you guys don't work with Pivot, but I'm just using that because I know them real well. They have these cool little cable covers for their frames that they've made pretty universal on every bike almost every year. And so they rarely change it. They just change it on the new trail cap. But those little covers, if you guys had designed that and said, hey, this will work, and it's universal and you can put it on every single one and it works great. Then if you used it on another brand, then Pivot would be pissed off.
They would be violating the intellectual property.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it gets super tricky, because when you get down to the nuts and bolts of that, and the engineers are just designing, sometimes it's like, oh, I know how to fix that. And then it can be really, really difficult.
Yeah.
I work in an engineering company, so we deal with this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you're familiar. And it's more, for us, we don't really, like, there's really no chance of cross-contamination, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So we're not going to throw parts from another project into another project's 3D files, because it's just kind of irresponsible.
Yeah.
It can be challenging when we know we've kind of solved something before, but there's always many different ways to approach something. So,
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So, okay.
You can know the answer, and it's like, I can't tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's an interesting thing with engineering consulting firms.
I got a question on something you said that, again, I've tried to deep dive on. I'm in this industry. I hear it all the time. I feel like I know what it is. It comes up all the time, this term, kinematics. Okay. It's very hard to go find out what actually people mean by kinematics. So like sometimes they use it as a noun and sometimes a verb, and like it gets used all over the place. So what would you say kinematics means or what it is?
Well, this is the bridge between my expertise and the engineering expertise. So it's like the actual creation of the kinematic for a full suspension mountain bike is not something that I have to do. I can have influence on it by asking the engineers to kind of change points around, but essentially it's creating all of the pivot points on the bike that determine how much rear wheel travel. Try saying that 10 times. Rear wheel travel the bike has, where the pivot points are, how many links it has, what length or stroke of shock it has. That's kind of
so it's like a one word, like description of like how the suspension like it's basically an easy suspension design is, and so it's like a one word. Okay, that helps.
So Claude says,
what does Claude say?
Claude says how parts of a system move relative to each other.
Okay, yeah. And see, that is very hard to wrap your head around, because somebody will say something like, well, the kinematics of the bike or the kinematic design, they'll use it in different terms and throw it around, and it's like really confusing sometimes. And again, I've been in this. I understand that what they're trying to say is that how the bike works, but is there some sort of actual goal? Like, is it, it was really tough because it was kind of had to do with geometry. People were using it in a geometry term, like a front center and a rear center and things like that. And I'm like, so now we're getting into geometry too. So, and then they were talking about the front of the bike and how it changes the geometry, and that affects the kinematics. And so it gets a little weird when you start using that term. So
yeah, it's true. And when you do look at it, as a whole system, maybe the term kinematic makes more sense, but I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I think it's an easy word. Like, it's just, hey, this is easier than trying to say, oh yeah, it's the high pivot or how far away the links are, if it's walking bar or if it's, you can just say kinematics. Kinematics.
And I know that you guys have talked about having Simon on, my colleague.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the more guru guys for suspension and kinematic. There's a bunch of them in our company, but obviously I'm kind of more on the visual and 3D side of things rather than the engineering. So that's kind of why I'm saying it's not exactly my jurisdiction, but
but thanks for trying. Thanks for trying to set us straight, man. We appreciate
it.
Yeah. So you guys are in Quebec.
Yeah.
And you guys have obviously some pretty harsh winters and some pretty gnarly terrain up there. Do you think like where you're located influences the design of your bikes at all?
Yeah, it does feel like kind of extreme terrain in a certain way. It helps us that there's a good variety too. We're kind of right between Appalachian Mountains and Laurentian Mountains, so there's a good diversity of types of trails. It's not like we're only designing for steep loam or some specific type of trail. We've got it all around us, which is kind of cool. So I think that definitely plays into the DNA where our bikes tend to be really good all-rounders, but it's not just us, right? There's a handful of bike companies out here that kind of end up having that same approach. But it is really cool to see things tested to absolute limits, and it's kind of right outside your door.
Yeah, it's simple. I think the only thing that you're missing is that all year round riding that we have here at the future location of Faction Bike Studio South.
Yeah, I'm always amazed. Like Tucson in general, we have low cost of living. There's tons of land. It's fairly cheap. I'm always amazed that more companies aren't here when they spend as much money as they do in some places. And I know there's kind of shipping and logistics that cause some of that. Yeah. So,
although I can't imagine shipping into Quebec is simple.
Well, they don't need to ship. They're shipping themselves.
They're shipping digital files.
Yeah. I mean, you got some 3D printed stuff but really it's just you need some flights, and flights are cheap to Tucson. So
right on,
yeah,
man.
there you go.
you guys are
Well, maybe the second office is a possibility there.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm trying to will it into existence.
Yeah.
I might know someone that can help you get it set up.
Yeah,
if you guys are interested. So
I feel
please keep us in mind.
As a business expense, it's a necessity. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
But hey, I had a question on the design aspect, because there's a particular bike that we sold in the past that just made me frustrated because it was a good working bike. It did a good job. It rode well, but it was overly heavy. And the design of the tube set, it was a carbon bike. I don't know if you've heard of a brand called Eminent.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So this is as far as I know, it's gone out of business. It was a smaller company. It may have been something that you guys may have worked on, so I was a little worried about bringing it up. But the engineer who kind of started it kind of looked at bikes and was like, I think I can do a better job, right? And so he took basically kind of a horse bar link and modified it quite a bit. It looked like an old, I don't know if you know the old Schwinn Ladwell design bikes where they had the 4 bars were really at the 4 bar. It wasn't like this distorted look of a 4 bar. They look like an A-arm. And it's a similar design to that. The bikes that he made worked really well. They actually rode, pedaled great. He had a system where you could change the travel by changing the stroke of the rear shock, and a bar that basically mounted it to different lengths. So the same frame could do a 120 travel bike, then a 140, and then I think a 160. And so you could, it was a good design. He was really talented, but the thing that he did that drove me nuts is he would design the tube set squared off, like think stealth bomber, or, you know, those real rigid, sharp angles. And the bike had this potential, but it was kind of portly, you know, a little bit heavy. And I'm like, that's not a good, I mean, he had such raised edges. I know those are stress risers, you know? And so, from what I heard, it was because he liked the look of it. And so,
so that's the question, right? So like how often do you run into conflicts between like some of the design requirements around, you know, strength, weight, safety, and like the aesthetic of the bike? Yeah. Like, do you have any examples of like conflicts and like where you've run into that? Like, hey, they wanted to do this, but it doesn't look cool, so we gotta change it. Yeah, like it looks like everybody else's bike. You know, how do we make it look unique? So
exactly, there's always a little bit of push and pull between those characteristics, because you know, we are trying to create different things, and in order to do so, we'll sketch something that maybe is a bit wild. And there's always a challenge where we kind of look at this, and it's not just me. I'll look at it with my engineer coworker next to me, and we see, like, you know, you can tell me if I'm crazy, but what if we did this? And it's kind of like this collaborative thing where we're trying to figure out, okay, it probably won't look like the original sketch. We're probably going to have to soften this radius, and we're probably going to have to, you know, make this taper less dramatic or something. But the process is kind of, it is highly collaborative, and it is trying to come up with something new, but it has to be something that works. In the end, like you've mentioned, we've done like a ton of 300 something projects. Of those, like it's in the 90s, the percentage of what ended up hitting the market. So our goal is always like successful products to market.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow, that's a crazy success rate, actually.
Well, I mean,
it's actually insane how many of it, like, and a portion of that isn't in the market is because it was always meant to just be a test mule kind of thing. So
I didn't see that statistic on your website. Maybe you should put that on your website, because that's
if it's not there, we should.
Maybe take a note, because like I studied your website pretty deeply, and I'm gonna feel bad if it's there. But
I feel like if you had an in-house R&D, you would be more accepting of them farting around trying new things and seeing what sticks. And but when you go outside and hire somebody to do it, you're probably much more motivated to have that product actually make money to pay back that expense.
Exactly. So that's kind of at the core of it being a consulting service, is that the people who hire us want it to happen. And there's really no excuse to go through that process and not have something that's successful. So
What's,
Okay. I just confirmed.
what?
It's not on your website.
What?
Oh, I don't know what the number is, but it's very high.
That's pretty amazing. So, I'm not even using this list.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm just walking all over
the place. It doesn't matter. You're good.
We did talk about visualization and software tools, but I was just going to ask you, really, what is the part of the job that makes you want to go to work every day? Like, what is it that, I mean, you were saying that there's all this process of figuring out what you can and can't do. Then you got to work through the process. The sketching and the kind of design is really fun. And then you got to get to, is it going to actually work and things like that? What is the particular process in there that really brings you back every day, that like really just kind of does it for you, where you put up with all the other stuff just because you get to do that? So,
well, I think at our core, we're a bunch of bike nerds, and we just really love to spend our time on this stuff. I think that's kind of the generalization for everyone at Faction. But for me specifically, I think the refinement and the refinement of the process as we go through to see something go from a sketch to a first 3D model to a detailed 3D model, and then eventually it shows up in the mail on your desk and you get to see it and you get to ride it. I think that's the most satisfying process to go through. And for a bike nerd to be able to be involved in that, I think that's kind of like, it's the ultimate. It's the dream job, right?
Yeah. So is that in the contract where they got to send you a bike? Is it always your size?
I wish. No, I'm 6'3", 220, and I'd never get to.
Yeah, they're always coming in mediums, prototype. Aren't they? They're always mediums or large. Yeah,
I'm worried I'm going to break it. So no, we try and get a model of everything we work on. So
when you say a model, is that like a production, rideable?
Ideally rideable.
Yeah. That's maybe not the end color and fit and finish, but rideable.
Yeah, it might be like a prototype where there's no paint, or it's got the wrong components, or whatever. But it's worse when we get the prototypes that you can't ride.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's just a tease. They can only sit there, and sometimes they actually meet the bandsaw to be cut up and analyzed, which hurts even more. But you get used to it.
Destructive testing is really a double-edged sword, because breaking stuff is fun, but then you're breaking something. Exactly. You're like, I could have used that.
So it's necessary. And then if you see something fail a test, you're like, oh, I'm glad I didn't ride that.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you own any bikes that Faction has helped design?
Yeah, right now.
Is it that specialized right behind?
See, that was my next question, was like, what bikes do you own?
Well, actually, I had a question that I thought would be kind of fun is, do you ever walk like at a bike park or something and see a bike that you worked on? And like, I mean, I feel like you have to keep secrets all the time.
It's got to feel good.
Does that bottle up? Do you ever go out in the backyard and just yell that I made that, anything?
It can be challenging at times. I was riding out west with some friends last spring, and I was riding a bike that I had rented, and they just insisted that I had worked on it. They wouldn't let it die. And I was like, no, I swear to you, this is not mine. But yeah, no, that's a challenge. You got to hold your tongue. Of course, it's part of the job, right?
I know we were watching videos off your website, and everybody would show, like, maybe it was Facebook, I don't know, but you'd see people with their bikes, and I'm like, that guy's on a this, whatever. And I'm like, they must make that one, Yeah. And I think Adam said, he didn't say that, he just said that he's an ambassador for GT, I think, at the time, like he was riding GTs. And we're like, of course, we're like, oh, you must make those, and like, it doesn't really, so something that always cracks me up in the bike industry is that people, my bike rep, one of my reps comes in, and I think I can say this, he's not going to get mad at me, but he's my Shimano rep. And he's like, hey man, can you get me a pivot? And like, and it's like, you forget, because he's in the industry, you forget that he only can get one part of that. I can get only the bikes we sell, Right. And so you kind of forget that we are all bike nerds and we're having fun with this stuff. And so like, Brian loaning me that frameworks, I was like super giddy, because I'm like, I don't think I would have had an opportunity to try one of these out. Yeah. If it weren't for that situation, even though I'm in the bike industry, I I don't think even I could call him up and be like, hey, can I have one of your bikes? Call up Nico or something. But it's kind of weird what we choose to ride. And even though you may make it, you may not be able to have one. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And in our office, I feel like everyone reaches for those really niche bikes. So if you're seeing a lineup of bikes that belong to us, then it's probably also people just finding weird stuff that they really want.
A lot of them were old pictures of 26-inch bikes. I can't remember where it was, but yeah. And evidently a lot of people at Faction do like ultra cross country in the mud kind of rides. I don't, there was
endurance stuff.
Yeah. Like endurance stuff. So yeah.
There's definitely, it's really cool to see what everyone's into, because it's not all just mountain bikers or enduro riders. There's people who are into bike packing and ultra distance, and there's some roadies and some guys who live for their fat bikes, and it's a real diverse bunch. So
that's pretty cool. So you can bring a lot to the design process of bringing that experience. In fact, that was one of our questions that we were going to talk about, is like how many hats does each person wear? Like how...
Yeah, I had a hypothesis that in smaller companies, sometimes you wear more hats than just yours. And so I was just speculating that you probably get more involved in like specific design than maybe like my company that has 16,000 engineers, right?
Yeah.
And a huge design organization.
Yeah, we definitely try and match the people with the projects that are most appropriate. So if someone has a ton of, enduro or gravity oriented mountain biking experience, and the project comes through the door that's that topic, we'll try and match it up. But it's not always the case. I've worked on basically every genre of bike out there, even though you might match me up with the mountain bike stuff a bit more, and vice versa. There's some industrial designers on our team who are more road and gravel oriented, but they can work on mountain bikes just as well as I can. So we do our best to kind of optimize our experience and our knowledge, but there's always a sharing of knowledge too, where if you're working on a project where you don't know as much, you can always call over that engineer who does, kind of thing.
That's cool. Yeah.
Hey, you mentioned that, human factors or, like the bike body interface, ergonomics, whatever is kind of part of what's in your job jar. Mm-hmm. And also you said you were 6'3" and 220, and I'm 6'3" and more than 220. So fellow rock crusher, just interested in how much focus or attention is applied to the non-medium 180 pound, 5'10" rider. As you're going through this process, are they thinking about guys like you and me, or girls that are 5 foot tall, weigh 110 pounds?
Yeah, it's becoming a much more of a factor. I feel like you've probably seen it in other, in the marketing of all of these bikes, where we are getting a bit more specific with the geometry for the larger sizes, with size specific chainstays. Yep. And the layups are being applied more specifically for larger bikes, so that the larger ones don't ride less stiff compared to the medium size. You lay it up with say the carbon layup or the tube thickness on the aluminum gets ramped up through the sizing in order so that all the bikes kind of feel proportionate through the size range. We, of course, the size medium ends up being the one that's on the website.
Yeah, right.
That side view of the size medium ends up being kind of the visual that everyone locks into. But we definitely spend a lot of time early days when we're sketching, figuring out how that size range is actually going to work. So is the extra small going to look kind of gorky because the top tube has to do this kink, or is the extra large going to look really silly because the head tube's, twice as long as the medium or something? And we definitely play around with those variables to make sure that it feels cohesive and one doesn't feel like it's a totally different bike than the medium, right?
What are the extremes? What do you design to for height and weight? What's the max, what's the min, and then what are the weight parameters?
Well, for adult bikes, This is off the top of my head, but a lot of the size range is like 410, 411 up to 6'6", 6'7". That's kind of like the max 99 percentile. So 99% of the population fits in that size bracket. There's certainly people who go a bit further with double XLs and triple XLs, but that's kind of a bit even more niche.
Yeah.
You probably know how many how many XL bikes do you bring in versus mediums, right?
Not nearly as many. Yeah. And some companies extra large is another company's extra large and vice versa,
Yeah.
So that's kind of weird too.
So what about weight? How does that factor in the rider weight?
Is there like a standard, like a it has to take this much weight or?
Yeah. So the like safety standards have a certain amount usually. I don't know off the top of my head exactly what it is. Again, that's more engineering realm. But we have worked on bikes that we've pushed that a bit further, knowing that, someone who is 6'6" is probably going to be over 250 kind of thing. And then we have worked on bikes where we're trying to make sure that the size range feels proportionately stiff. I think that's one of the cool newer innovation things that people are working on these days.
So your specialty is not so much in like, what parts are on it or where the suspension is or anything, but you're looking at, we're going to make a double diamond frame. How do you make it distinctive? What do you put? So you talked about radius, do you change the radius? So like that would be like where one tube meets another, you're kind of trying to blend that art with function. How often do you butt heads with those engineers that are like, nope, just stick it together? Like how often because I know with carbon and as you layer carbon, it makes a different stiffness and it can affect the stiffness of the bike. So to achieve a certain look in the carbon, that you may want a deeper head tube or something. And then you have like UCI rules. I don't know if you know this, but UCI has like a certain depth from the head of the tube to the back, to be qualified for aero or what have you. And so I'm out of my depth, but I just know that it exists. And so like, how often do you have to like fight for something that's going to look so cool, but then it may really affect the way that the bike turns out?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of tuning knobs. I mean, you said you're in an old music theater. It's like your big soundboard, right? You've got all these dials in front of you and you get to play with which ones to kind of come up with the bike. So that one dial that sharpens all the radiuses, I'm going to maybe push it a bit further. And then the engineer comes by and pulls it back down a bit. It is like a bit of negotiation there, but honestly, we've all been down the road so many times where we try and push things a bit too far and where things end up, right?
Yeah.
What manufacturers are capable of doing in terms of like how tight a radius could be for a carbon bike, how, what is the manufacturing limits of, say, a hydroformed tube for an aluminum bike. And not to push it too far because ultimately you still have to make it.
So you're using your experience to narrow that down so you just don't have those conflicts.
So, basically. And sometimes it's really like the goal of the project can play a role there too, where if you're working on a really ultralight road bike and that the layup of the carbon is going to be super critical for getting the right weight and stiffness, you might not want to push those dials too far in terms of the aesthetic purpose. If you look at like the Spesh Athos, like their lightweight road bike right now, like if you look at the marketing, they're very clear with what they've done there, and that they've kind of pulled all of those design requirements down and really meshed them with the kind of manufacturing requirements of the carbon to create as much of a blend between light and stiff as they can.
Yeah, so, that's a huge thing, even in the manufacturing process. Like when they switch to kind of mandrel manufacturing versus bladder, that Felt, I think, called it, or Rocky calls it smooth wall, but basically where they have a foam, frame inside of the carbon, and then they inflate a tube inside that foam, and it helps reduce the crinkling or the wrinkling of the epoxy on the inside so that you don't get stress risers, So is that stuff that you get to input on, or is that shifting into somebody else's scope?
It's partially, it'll be kind of like we have a discussion with the vendor or with like a layup expert. We have a great relationship with the guru, Richard Matthews, who has laid up basically every carbon bike out there.
Nice. What does he work for? Anyone individual, or is he a manufacturer? I don't know him because I'm horrible with names, but.
Okay. So he's just a contractor. He'll come in and help basically anyone. But he's got years and years of experience. It's kind of crazy how many bike companies have worked with him.
So is that like, if you put somebody similar to that, would that be Frank the welder?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
on the other side. Yeah.
I just happen to know him because we camped together one time. So, but yeah, so basically somebody who's been in the industry, worked for multiple companies.
Frank the welder, is he like one of the characters from Bob the Builder?
Yes, he is the welder of Bob, and he's the guy who says, "Yes,
is this
we can."
actually a person?
Yeah, he goes, "Yes, we can." No, so just a little divert, because Nico Malali, Frank the welder, is the guy who's helping most of his welds.
Okay.
And so back in the day, do you remember I think it was the ATEC stem, ATEC, ATEC.
Yeah.
If you look under there, I think, I could be wrong, somebody may correct me, but I'm pretty sure that was Frank the welder. And you'll see a lot of those will say FTW on them. So,
I thought FTW meant something else.
No, yeah. Well, it does. But I know him because, no joke, I was hanging out at a downhill race at a campground, and we were around a fire, and we were just talking, and he told me, he goes, "Hey, I weld. I'm a welder," and he was super humble at the time, but the guy is like an amazing welder. So, and he's a hired gun. So he's very similar to Faction. Huh. Like he'll go out and kind of, he doesn't have a particular home.
Oh, cool.
And so it sounds like the guy that you were talking about is kind of a similar
for carbon layup.
Carbon layup. So
yeah, exactly.
Julian, go ahead.
What was I going to say? So someone like that, like Richard Matthews, could tell you, hey, the layup here, it means that this radius here is all filler, basically.
Yeah.
You're not actually gaining any performance, any stiffness, any strength. If anything, it's kind of potentially even doing the opposite. So he's the type of person who could help you tune your design, specifically in the layup stuff. And we've got a certain amount of that knowledge, but there is kind of some gurus out there like that who help us out.
Yeah, I was watching a YouTube video, and they took a giant frame and they cut it up. They went and bought it. It was like $4,000. I went to a local bike shop, bought this like $4,000 TCR Advanced or whatever it was, and then cut it up and then analyzed it. And I don't know if it was Richard who they were talking about, but the guy that was talking about was showing them all the voids at the corners and the radiuses. He was showing basically the bubbles, which you're not supposed to have, that cause, issues. And so it was kind of cool, but I was kind of amazed that these guys just took this $4,000 frame that was perfectly good, brand new, and just right off a showroom floor. It wasn't even a factory sample or anything like that, and just cut it up and just went through this. So it's kind of fun to watch, actually.
We've definitely done that too. It hurts to see it in the base in our lab.
Now, so I heard you can just super glue those back together and they'll be fine.
Oh yeah, no problem.
That's a joke. That's a joke.
Yeah, please do not do that.
Please do not do that.
You can put super glue on a scratch, but don't get carried away. So,
Julian, how do you guys stay ahead of like the design and aesthetic trends? You're working on a project that's not going to come.
Are you setting them or are you following them?
Yeah, there you go.
Hopefully we're setting them. Yeah. I mean, there are certain projects where we are kind of trying to push those limits for sure. There's definitely brands that know that they're considered like a fast follower, and that's an okay approach too. But in terms of finding that cutting edge, it's a lot of industrial designers look to other industries. You can kind of go crazy if you just stay in the bike industry and keep on looking at bikes over and over and over again. So you'll see a lot of our kind of inspiration boards, a lot of our imagery that we create in order to set the tone, the mood, the look of the bike ends up being very abstract and inspired by, say, like fashion or electronics or other kind of categories of product that are much faster moving than the bike industry. Ultimately, we have, maybe it's like a 2-year-ish window from when you start a project to when it ends up in your shop.
Right.
And you got to be really careful about what trends to follow in order to make sure it's even relevant on day one. Never mind, 5 years later when it's at the end of its like life cycle, right?
Oh yeah, like if it's too trendy and it just immediately becomes passé.
Like, where do you take your inspiration then? Like, what do you lean on personally?
I really love concept art. I really love like Blade Runner-esque concept artists online. There's an automotive industrial designers as well. Automotive designers are pretty kind of, that's the surgeon level designer, if you will, in the industry. And there's some pretty amazing ones out there. There's a guy, Kaisel, what's his last name?
Kaiser Soze?
No,
I know that guy. I know that guy. Sorry, squirrel.
Kaisel Salim. He's a British automotive designer who does a lot of really crazy renders, adding kind of futuristic body kits to old cars. He'll take like a Lamborghini Miura and like slam it to the ground and cut the bumper off, and he'll do all this stuff that you'd never do to the real car, but he does it, on the computer in CAD, and then he renders them in these crazy apocalyptic environments and wild lighting, and it's just eye candy. And I don't know if I've put together an inspiration board in the last year or so that hasn't had his stuff on it. So,
I grew up, my best friend's dad was an industrial designer. I grew up in Detroit. So, car industry is big there. And my best friend's dad was an industrial designer for the car industry, and all over his house, there were like sketches and pictures and stuff of cars. He, his claim to fame was he designed the Grand National, the Buick Grand National. I don't know if you're familiar with that car. It's kind of like a special car.
Okay.
His last name's Doble, Mike Doble. But, man, I kind of like saw this, like what you live, and you said, I didn't realize that the car guys were the surgeons. So I guess he was a surgeon.
Yeah. So like, that's a great way to kind of picture what you do. Like cause we've seen the car designers, and they get their big clay model and they go and form the clay and the concept car and kind of figure out how it's going to look. And then eventually somebody has to figure out how to fit everything in that little package and make it work. So you're kind of the one that gets to develop that model and that initial design. And so, that's, and
we've done 3D clay stuff for sure.
Yeah.
It's a bit old fashioned in terms of it's not as fast.
Yeah. You can just digitally print it now, right?
Exactly. And for us, it's almost faster to do that 3D model on the computer and print it, like 3D print it.
So I don't know if you can say this or not. So I understand you have to be secretive about stuff. Is there anything that you did that like we would recognize that you can tell us? Like besides Danger Home, because we talked about on the last one, and frameworks and the Loctite, is there anything that we may recognize that you guys had a hand in that you can say? Like maybe even abstract, where you're not.
You're just trying to get the question in a different angle, right?
Where maybe
you think they're going to give us a different answer this time,
but where multiple companies maybe use it, and so you're not really naming one company. Is there anything like that pops out where you're like, yeah, man, I went on that, or I did that, So
it's so hard. Everything's really got a name attached to it. We're going to be doing more in terms of like these more visible projects, because it is really nice to show people, and we do need some more kind of like evidence of our expertise out there in the world for people to see. And of course there are other people doing similar things to what we do, where it is more visible online, and ultimately, that's just not our approach.
I haven't been able to find another company that does exactly what you guys do.
Yeah, there's very, very few. There are more kind of agencies that focus on transportation design,
right,
in general. So there's a really big one in Austria called Kiska that does a lot of kind of ATVs and dirt bikes. And
it's more than just bicycles.
Yeah,
exactly. We're so specialized to just the bikes. So.
So what, I'm going to let you off the hook on the question and change the subject for you here, Julian, just because I respect your gag orders or your, is there a design trend that's just annoying, driving you crazy, you hate it, or maybe even one in the past that is now passed and you don't have to deal with, but like, is there a design trend out there? You're like, oh God, not again.
Yeah.
There was some really swoopy frames. I don't know how you describe it. 2015 era of like
Ellsworth
bikes.
When Ellsworth, Ibis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
I was pretty happy to see that trend kind of fade away, but I feel like there's some of it coming back these days too. That was, I don't know. I do like kind of crisp, sleek lines. I'm a fan of like, 80s automotive stuff that's really kind of like straight to the point and pretty boxy, but it's ultimately like still really attractive in a way.
Right.
So you'll see a lot of that in my sketching.
Yeah.
Now we can figure out what bikes you worked on.
Well,
we can go.
I definitely want you to go look up that Eminent bike because now I feel like you did work on it. But
he couldn't tell us.
Yeah,
he couldn't tell us.
I know.
And we haven't told him that I'm an expert in reading faces. So
yeah. Oh yeah. So
no.
I'm trying to think what other I'm trying to think. People that listen to this, they're going to have a question. Like, what question would they have? Like, what would you say is a trend that you see coming out that you can talk about that you think's gonna be popular?
Yeah, like what are you working on now in 2 years?
Yeah,
that you're seeing across
tell us the future.
Multiple
What's the
projects.
future?
Yeah, predict the future.
That's a good question. I think the last couple of years has been really like integration.
Yes,
it's been a really big theme, obviously, with things looking sleeker. In terms of mountain bikes, we've seen a lot of linkage being very integrated into the frame. It feels like it's a part of the rear triangle, or it feels like it's really kind of like cohesive there. I think some of the stuff that we're seeing in the future is kind of diverging from that slightly, where it's not pushed as far as like a 2004 Kona Stinky with a 12-foot long rocker.
Yeah.
But it's not a Scott.
Truss.
But it's not a Scott where everything's hidden inside the frame.
Well, exactly. So I think we're expressing a bit more of the mechanical element. And I think there is definitely a push for more maintainability. So expressing and exposing more elements that you need to access. So although that's a real counterpoint to where we've seen, road and gravel going in the last couple of years, I think we're going to see more of that in mountain bike in the next couple of years.
I can tell you from a bike shop standpoint, if you can design internal cable routing that's not a pain in the ass, you'll make millions. Like, because everybody loves to look at these fully integrated, hydraulic lines that go through the handlebar, through the stem, into the bike, and you never see them on the bike. This is road bikes mainly. No mechanic likes them. We all hate them. So, because the amount of work just to change
the cable,
a headset bearing or what have you, like that is a huge pain in the butt,
Yeah. Are we going to continue to see like cables routed inside the headset?
Yeah. Like, is that something?
I'm hoping the bike industry's learned, at least the mountain bike industry's learned enough that we shouldn't do that shit.
Is that the same guy that did the matte paint? Is it the same? Is it Larry?
It's Larry.
It's Larry.
Yeah, let's get it. I think we're seeing, obviously the mountain side of things was kind of pushed back slightly, maybe with the exception of cross country. I think cross country is kind of borrowing a bit from the road side of things.
Yeah.
In that there's a bit more integration. I think the mountain bike will continue to push back. And even if you do have the option for internal routing, the, you know, the external cable ports will remain, hopefully.
Yeah.
I don't know if I see the same going for road and gravel, though. I feel like if anything, it's just they're gonna double down.
Yeah, it's a big discussion in the shops.
Just quit carrying road and gravel stuff.
Well, so, just to bring up a point that sometimes, an industrial designer may not think about, I bet he does, but maybe not all of them do, is when we sell a $15,000 road bike and it's got an integrated bar and stem combo, and then we go to fit the bike and it needs to be different, the manufacturers have not actually have no answer to this other than just buy more stuff. And
that's a good question. Cause we have, on this podcast, we have delved into bike fits, both on road bikes, gravel bikes, and mountain bikes. And I actually went and got fitted myself and went through that whole process. And it's amazing how much little tweaks can impact your ride.
Yeah.
And when the design like limits my ability to adjust the fit of the bike, that's a selling point for me.
Big time. And I am seeing that more often where the bikes are way more adjustable on the mountain side. I'm not seeing it on the road side. So like mountain right now, there's a lot of bike companies that are actually including adjustable reach into their designs. So they can change the reach numbers, adjustable wheelbases, adjustable leverage ratios, things like that. And on the road side, like I swear you can buy a $15,000 road bike, and then when you get it fit to you, they'll have to tell you need to spend another $500 because that company didn't come up with any answer to the fact that the bike needs to be fit to the person.
So is that something you guys deal with? You guys thinking about ability to fit a bike to a rider during the design?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to go to your mountain bike point too, in terms of the tune or the elements that the rider or the consumer can tune on the end, I think we'll see another layer of that in the next couple of years too. You've probably seen it on the Downhill World Cup where people are adding extra braces to make bikes like stiffer in the corners. For certain tracks where it's necessary, or take out the brace and make it a bit softer.
Like on the stays.
Yeah. I think that's something we'll see kind of at the consumer level, hopefully soon.
That's pretty cool.
But it feels like there's like a maturing of the audience. Like the whole demographic is becoming more knowledgeable. So, even in terms of geometry and all of these like small tweaks. So, flip chip was the iteration of that 5 years ago. And now we've got reach adjust, and in a few years, hopefully we've got even more like dials to turn. So,
yeah. It's nice to be able to take one bike and kind of help it get to be what the customer needs rather than requiring the customer to change for the bike.
It's an interesting balance though, because you give me too many dials, I don't know what to do. Like trying to set up my suspension, like I've kind of gone away from like factory and just back to like performance. And if I'm talking about Fox products, because like there's just too, like I'm not sophisticated enough to understand these dials. And so just make it good.
There's a certain level
make it good enough.
Set and forget, where people just set it up. And sometimes all of those adjustments are really so that you can set and forget it. Like we sell bikes that have multiple bottom bracket height and head angle adjustments. I don't know a ton of people that go change them on every single ride, depending on the ride. My Rocky has that, and I'll change it when I'm doing descending at a bike park, and then I'll change it when I'm doing cross country, but that's about it. I don't get into a lot of the other stuff. But what happens is when a customer's buying the bike, if they have some idea of what they want, that bike is more likely to be adaptable to them.
And you guys can set it up from them from the beginning.
That's a business decision. So that company has now said, hey, we are making a bike that is more adaptable to the customers rather than trying to make everybody convinced that our way is the only way. So I don't know which one's better, because sometimes companies are like, you just added a bunch of weight and a complexity that didn't need to be there because our way is better, and people just need to get used to it and they'll enjoy it once they do. That's a genuine philosophy that I see people, manufacturers have, so it's two different ways of looking at it.
I think there's value there too, in terms of the mindset of the the customer too. This is getting into my like user-centric design elements too, where there's a bit of an aspiration sometimes when you're looking at a mountain bike and saying, hey, I can make it a cross-country bike to go do these trails, and I can make it an enduro bike to go do these trails. And the reality is you probably won't, but it helps justify the sticker price, right? To a certain extent.
This can be, when you're talking to your wife, this can be 5 different bikes.
Well, and I do that.
You already have 5 bikes.
Yeah. A lot of people will come in and their like questions will be real specific, like what's the head angle, and they're trying to decide between 2 bikes of one that's a 65.2 and one's a 65.5 head angle. And I'm like, just change your rear tire pressure and you'll get, you know what I mean? Like it's little changes, or you could add 10 millimeters to your fork, or you could, there's all kinds of different ways, but they'll just get so
indexed
onto those numbers.
You can thank Pink Bike for that. I'm pretty sure.
It's also this kind of philosophy of buying something from your couch. You can't talk to somebody and kind of get an idea of what the character of this product is when you're buying it from a couch. You can just look at the numbers and you can just start analyzing it and cross-referencing, and you lose a little bit of that, like, the numbers say this, but it rides like this, And so then the bike company reacts because they're like, oh, these numbers are the ones that are selling and these aren't. And so now we got to work on those numbers, and they've kind of lose touch with, there is some times when you have to hold a customer's hand and bring them to something and show them what they need. And then there's other times when the customer says, this is what I want, and you have to be able to give them that. So there's 2 different ways. So
Julian, what are you most excited about relative to mountain bikes in the future?
I'm interested in seeing where like multi-material bikes go. Not just aluminum. I think there's some really cool stuff. Obviously, printed tie is kind of this like unicorn material that we keep on trying to find a price point and a use case for. I think there's going to be kind of this evolution that could happen through that, or other, bonding materials and stuff.
Bonding's come back into fashion. I mean,
it really has, yeah.
Yeah, when aluminum first hit the market in bikes, bonding was the only way.
I remember the old Trek bikes were bonded, right?
Yeah, and carbon too. And so, like, I don't know what changed to go away from that. Do you know? Like, I mean, I know Trek had corrosion issues and dissimilar metals. They'd have aluminum lugs and carbon tube sets.
I think a portion of that was just like, once you found out how to make the whole bike out of carbon at a cost that could make sense to a customer, they stopped caring about the lugs.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So you think it was just an evolution of like, trying to introduce carbon and bringing it in and then figuring out techniques and then making it affordable? Or do you think a lot of people think there's, like some sort of like cabal that everybody talks and they all figure this out, because it's not like they all were like, hey, we'll just slowly ratchet the price up of these and this is how we'll do that. And eventually they'll pay for carbon,
yeah, exactly.
It's just technology that slowly comes out and they learn from the old one. So, yeah.
Well, and you can see there's phases when they're trying to figure stuff out too. Like, early 90s was the crazy time for that, right?
Yeah.
There was a time when Specialized was selling basically the same bike in aluminum, chromo, and bonded.
Yeah.
And this, like a steel soft tail version, like they had just the craziest range. If I'd be pretty excited if we saw a bit more range come back in terms of materials and approaches. So.
Well, yeah, there was a whole period where they were trying to stick carbon in the fork in any way they could.
Yeah.
They had a SID fork that had just carbon windows in it, like just little sections that were carbon. It wasn't even the whole thing. And then, the Future Shock was basically a Judy with carbon legs, and so like, they were just like, carbon's awesome. Let's stick it wherever we can.
So are we?
Well, it's funny, like you're asking about future too, but we're talking about something from 30 years ago. It is so important to pay attention to what we have done in the past, because it's so like cyclical, and everything that we've done in cycling is going to come back as a trend at some point.
Well, I've already seen neon. I really want like purple anodized. Oh, wait, it came back. Like all of that stuff came back. Oh, fanny packs. I want them. Oh, wait, they came back.
So, mullets. I was happy to see that you didn't have a mullet.
Yeah, there is some hairstyles that I just can't handle.
Yeah.
So
I was talking about mullet styles, not mullet bikes, but.
Oh, mullet bikes. Yeah. No, I was talking about mullet hairstyles.
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
I know. Yeah. Julian, are we in for, I kind of feel like we're in an evolutionary period in mountain bike kind of manufacturing design right now. Like things are kind of happening slowly. And and I'm having a hard time envision any revolutions coming. Is there any revolutions coming that you know about? Like any major changes that are going to change the game?
I mean, there has to be good reason for it, right? Like we look at the last kind of like disruption, almost 10 years ago with One Buy and Boost and like that whole thing and 29ers taking over, like it all kind of happened all at once.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to see that much in the next couple of years. I think everyone's been real focused on e-bikes.
Yeah.
So the 36, there's no 36er coming in a major
they
way.
Exist. I've seen them, but I don't even know if you or I could ride them.
Yeah. Yeah. They're crazy. I almost bought a medium 36er, like to fit me. And it's like, it was 2 wheels with like a stick in between them. Like that's all it was.
That's so funny.
Yeah. The day one of those comes through our door, I'm going to have a hard time making it look good. It's a bit of a wagon.
So was it Jones? Jones, I think, had a 36er, and it was a good looking bike. I think it was a Jones. It's hard to know, but
so you mentioned e-bikes, everything's e-bikes. And like it did I don't think I've talked about these metrics on the podcast before, but like 2023, at least in the United States, there was 1.7 million mountain bikes sold. 25% of those were e-bikes. Wow. And then if you look at the compound adjusted growth rates, like you kind of project out, and there's a lot of assumptions in these, but if you kind of project out, it's like a 3.7 growth rate for mountain bikes and a 15% growth rate for e-mountain bikes. So what that means is that somewhere around 2035, we're going to sell more e-mountain bikes than we're going to sell acoustic mountain bikes. Or people are going to buy more e-mountain bikes. Are you guys seeing that in the projects that you're working? Is it shifting towards more focus on electric mountain bikes than acoustic mountain bikes?
Yeah, absolutely. We do. It's more than half of our projects right now are e-bikes.
Oh, wow.
And it's growing every year. And I think one of the things we're seeing is a little bit more kind of like parallel development where the e-bikes are getting a lot lighter as the tech improves. Obviously, these batteries are getting smaller and lighter, as well as the motors getting smaller and lighter and more effective. So we're seeing a little bit more kind of like parity between an acoustic and electric, or an electric version of the same bike, or a bike that's meant for the same purpose, at least.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and we've seen this for a while too, where down tubes growing on mountain bikes without batteries.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they kind of look, it's like, oh, well, if I look at a lightweight e-bike versus just a regular enduro bike, those down tubes are almost the same.
Yeah.
Can't tell.
We're going to continue to see those things kind of mesh. It's incredibly expensive, obviously, to develop e-bikes from the ground up every time there's a new technology shift. So I would hope that there's for sustainability elements, I hope that at least there's like some more compatibility considerations there where we're not just kind of throwing these things away, but we're not as focused on the component side of things. We're more working on integrating those things into the bikes we're working on once they're in development or once they're released. So.
Oh, interesting. I got to imagine it's like a designer's dream that these things are getting smaller because from an aesthetics perspective, like my Rocky Mountain Altitude Power Play, I love the bike. It rides great.
Yeah.
It looks awful. It's like a tank.
Yeah.
It's so big.
It's just got that big triangle.
It's just huge.
Yeah.
Like the tubes are like this big, like a foot around or something. It's crazy.
Yeah. I had the Pivot Shuttle SL, which was one with a Fazua motor system in it. One of the most hidden, like people never knew I was on an e-bike. You could barely see it because, with a lot of e-bikes, they'll have kind of the motor is shown, one for cooling purposes and two, because it's fairly wide. And so they don't bring the carbon down around it. They just let it kind of mount to the underside, and so they're a little more obvious. And this Fazua system fits so much inside the bike, you don't even notice it. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on the trail, like intersection, talking to random people, and they're like, yeah, those e-bikes, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I have an e-bike. and they have no idea, because it's so svelte and so small, so.
Yeah. And as those parts become more efficient, it's like you'll see a lot of those and it'll be unnoticeable, right?
Yeah. Well, so I was watching something the other day and they were talking about cheating and bicycling, and they were going through kind of a history at one point in one of the tours long time ago, back in the day.
Someone got caught with a motor?
No. Even before that, when they started this program, they were talking about how they were putting lead in the water bottles. So when you got past a water bottle at the top of a hill, they would pass you a lead-filled one, and you'd put it on the bike, and you use the weight of the water bottle on the descent to gain more speed. And so that's some of the early
I never would have thought of that.
But as you go through this program, they start going up more to modern time, and they talk about motor doping, and then they put a statistic that I had never seen, that I didn't know, because I remember it coming around and everybody like being concerned about it, and they were like, what they were doing heat cameras to see if there's a motor, and as they rode by, they could see heat signatures. They put something up that like at least 4 people were caught and fined like $20,000. And banned for like pro races, and banned for like 6 years doing this. And I didn't know anyone was actually caught. I thought it was a fear, or it was low level stuff. So,
Julian, you guys putting any secret motors in bikes?
No, but if you find the guy who did, maybe we'll hire him.
Yeah. So there was a company that did it, and they actually sell the motor system and the bike, and it basically goes in your seat tube. And it has a worm drive that goes down to a gear that you mount to your spindle or your crank. And so when you assemble the bike, it could go in a regular bike as long as the bike had the parameters. And they got to where they were actually producing their own bikes, probably having some, brand make a frame for them. And then they would put the battery in the seat pouch. And this was a hidden motor that they were marketing basically as an assist for people to go on a ride that was unnoticeable. And that way people would avoid ridicule or what have you. And I think the nice way to say that is to help, help people that are losing their fitness with age or what have you, and they're not keeping up with their group rides, maybe be able to continue to do that. That's a big portion of the e-bikes are people that are just getting to the point where they're not getting out and enjoying themselves as much because of their physical limitations, and the e-bike bridges that and makes it longer.
Yeah.
So, but
that's cool.
Well, Julian, man, I really appreciate you talking with us, and it's been educational. Unfortunately, you won't tell us any of the bikes that you're working on. That's
I know, man. Do you guys have like a counselor on hand to help you with that? Because I feel like if you need
training,
seriously, like I feel like if you made all this cool stuff, you gotta tell somebody. Do you just walk in like every day and tell somebody else that works there that you made that? Like how does that work? Like how do you release that? That energy and that excitement that you just made something cool, and maybe you get to see it out there actually doing well. Like what I can imagine that's a drawback, Oh,
it's challenging for sure. But, we've got our group chat teams where, everyone lights up when we see something launch, that we've worked on, and it's always exciting.
Now, can you tell
that type of gratification, hopefully for most of us, overweighs the need for us to say anything. So,
can you tell your significant others, or do you have to keep it from them? And I'm saying that as a joke. I'm saying that as a joke, but then it's occurring to me it's actually a real question. Like
the thing is, I don't know if my wife would know the brands that I'm working for.
It would be nothing to her.
Yeah, my wife doesn't know what a fork is on a bike. I'm like, it's the part that I work on.
Yeah,
like,
it's how we pay the bills.
Yeah, exactly.
Julian, do you got any final thoughts for our listeners?
No, I mean, I think it was really nice chatting with you guys. It's always nice chatting with other industry people, and I invite you guys up to come and say hi whenever you guys have a chance, because it is really cool to to see how everything's done. And, you might see some secrets. Hopefully not.
I'm down. I'm down with. I've gotten really good at signing NDAs. So
yeah, there you go.
No issue.
Well, when we're finalizing the terms of the deal for Faction Bike Studio South, we'll come up to Quebec and we can see you guys up there.
FBT Faction Bikes Tucson. So I'm telling you, man, I already know where you're going to ride. Like, we just need to find the place that's closest to the trails that you want to use the most, so you don't have to drive there. So
that's the ideal, is that you're right there at the trailhead, right?
Shimano has been in town doing products,
so we can get Shimano
Media
here,
Camp, and
we'll get Faction here.
But I mean, already all these other companies, I'm not trying to make him feel bad or like they're behind the times. I'm just saying there's all these other companies that come here.
So many engineers.
Yeah, there's all this other companies that have decided this is a good idea. If his bosses wanted to kind of keep up with everybody else, they may consider it.
I can't imagine. That's awesome.
4 months a year more testing is, it's a business benefit. Right?
That is a huge business benefit. And
I'll do the strategic assessment for you if you want, man.
Thank you very much.
I'll do that
for sure.
Julian, thanks a lot, man. We really appreciate your time.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.